Greetings, Internet. This is Uncle Fonzo. Nice to see all of my nieces and nephews and nibblings in the universe. And we're back. So, we're going to be doing dependency injection topics. All right. Let's see. This is going to be another re-recording. We recorded this 3 times before. Won't go back into that, rehash all that, but it seems like we got the audio problem resolved. So let's do this recording. For the next hour, we'll be going over dependency injection and related topics to that. All right. Time for me to be quiet and let our host over at Free Code Camp continue. These videos that this gentleman put together were, at least according to this location here on Free Code Camp, were put together about a year ago. So been going through this stuff to simultaneously try to update, any updates as necessary, and coding along. I will not be coding along this particular hour because I've already done so. And the version where the audio got whacked. But next section we'll be able to do that. So that should be fun, I hope. All right, let me stop talking and let's begin.
In this video, we are going to talk about dependency injection. So we will talk about what is dependency injection, and we will see what is DI providers. So DI stands for dependency injection in short. So let's go ahead and talk about dependency injection. So dependency, in case you are coming from some other technologies, you may have already used it. For example, .NET and Java uses dependency injection a lot. But in case you are not aware, that's absolutely fine. So what is a dependency here? So in Angular, a dependency can be a service, or sorry, not it can be a class actually. It can be class. So let's read it. So in Angular, a dependency can be a class or an object which you can access or you can inject inside a component or inside a service wherever you want to. It's actually a design pattern which is, as I said, widely used in other technologies. .NET, Java, they use it a lot. And in other technologies, you have to actually go ahead and do some configuration to actually achieve dependency injection. But Angular has the dependency injection built in, and this is one of the I would say one fun. So dependency injection is one of the feature which actually makes Angular what it is. It makes Angular really better, because this is one functionality, or you can say one feature, which is not available with other frameworks. And it is really powerful. So we will of course go ahead and see what we can achieve using dependency injection. As you said, there are multiple types of providers. So you have class-based providers, then you have value providers, and we have factories. We'll talk about those. What are those? And we can also like, before we actually go ahead and talk about other DI providers, we'll start with class-based provider. So we'll start with class-based provider, then we'll see value provider, and we will see factory as well. So here, let's go ahead and see how you can create and consume a service. We will also talk about what service does, because that's important, right? Before you go ahead and use something, you have to be aware why it is used. So here, rooms component.ts, let's go back to this component. So if we see it, the number of lines of code in my rooms component is already raised around 126. I mean, including the spaces, but yeah, I mean, more than 100 lines of code. And some of the code may be reusable, right? So not right now, but of course in longer term, some of the code which we have written inside room component can be reusable. So what we can do, of course, what we can do is we can create something reusable and we can move this code somewhere. What is that somewhere? So that somewhere is service. So what we can do is we can create a service. We can move all reusable code in that particular service. Generally, what you try to do is keep the code minimum inside your component and try to split that code into multiple services. I mean, services is something where you will be writing your business logic. So your business logic should go into your your services. So don't try to write everything inside component. Always split them into services. Services are something which knows, okay, what it's supposed to do. For example,
Mm-hmm.
it's possible that you may do multiple things inside a component. For example, you can have a dashboard where you are accessing the data from, let's say, employees, you are accessing the data, rooms data, you are accessing the booking data. So what you will do, write all the code inside your component? The answer is no, of course. What you can do is you can create multiple services based on what each service is supposed to do. For example, each service, one service for rooms, one service for booking, one service for employee, and then I can just use all those services inside the component. And the advantage is I can actually go ahead and use that service anywhere I want to, and I don't have to duplicate the code. So
Mm-hmm.
let's see how we can actually do or start creating a service and split the logic in this example. So what we'll do is we'll create a service for rooms. Now, for creating the services, it's up to you what folder structure you follow. Generally, what I do, I keep a folder called service or
Mm-hmm.
services, and I create my all services here. For example, any service related to rooms goes into this folder. Similarly, I mean, if I have to create a new service for employee, I'll create a services folder in employee and then move all the code base or add all the logic there.
Little agua break. Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and create our service. So we won't be doing it manually. We will be using Angular CLI. So you can type ng g generate as service and the name of your service. So here I want to create a service for rooms. So I'll say, okay, rooms. So my new file will be created inside this services folder. And here it is. So you have room service class created. So you can see, okay, it has a class and then provided in root. What is this provided in root? We will discuss about it. Let's ignore it as of right now. And what we will do here is we will move some logic from my rooms component to here. And then we will use this service rather than actually writing that code into room service. Let's see first this data, right? So we have actually this data which is coming. For example, in future, what we will do is we will get this data from our backend or from some API. So generally, the retrieval of any data should go into a service. So here I can create a method. I can say this is get rooms. Since this is rooms list. Mhm. Array, and then I'll just return this dot room list. So nothing extraordinary right now because we don't have the APIs. We just want to understand how
Mm-hmm.
services works. So we got the rooms data, which is now part of my service. And rather than actually doing or getting all the data, I mean, inside the component, what we have done is we have moved that logic into a service. Now let's see how to use that particular service. As we said in Angular, we are going to use dependency injection. So what is a dependency injection? It's a design pattern, of course. We said it's a design pattern. So, but what it does. So using dependency injection approach, the dependency injection approach says you should not create an instance directly. So in general, if I have to create an instance of class, this is something which we'll do. We'll say, okay, this is room service, which is type of uh, is equals to new room.
Right. New instantiation.
Okay, so this is how you will create a new instance of a class. But when we say we need to use dependency injection, this is something which you should not. So rather than creating the instance manually, we need to rely on the dependency injection, which is already provided built in by Angular. We don't have to do anything else. So let's see how we can do that. So here I can inject a service. I can inject anything. I can inject a class. I mean, even you can inject a component, which you should not do until unless you think that's the last approach possible, which I don't think so. I've seen some developers doing that, but that's an anti-pattern, I would say. Should not inject a component. So here we have created a service, and now we want to use this particular service inside our component. So this is how you will be doing it. So you will say uh, rooms, I mean the variable name service, which is type of rooms service. Now, once we do this, we have to also provide the access modifiers. Now, this is where a lot of developers get confused whether we should take it public or private. I would say always make it private. The thing is, if I make this particular service public, it can be accessed on the template, which is again an anti-pattern. A lot of developers
Mm-hmm.
does it. Should not access services directly from your template. Try to
Mm-hmm.
avoid it. So what I can do is I can mark this as private. It means, okay, I'm limiting this particular service to my template, to my TypeScript file itself, not anything else. So the instance will not leak onto my HTML or my template. Now to get the data, what we can do is we can say this dot rooms list is equals to, now we have to get it from service. So we'll say this dot rooms service dot get rooms. And let's go ahead and see the output. So, so let's go ahead and see the output. So here, of course, we have to click on toggle and you have your data back. The only difference is now this data is coming from your service, not from component itself. So component doesn't know how to get the data. Generally, your component should not know how to get the data or how to add the data or how to even do any business logic. That should not be the responsibility of your component. That should go into a service. So what is a service? A reusable class where you can actually put some business logic and then you can just access those inside your component. And uh, this is how you will create a service. So let's go ahead and move on. You can also achieve component interaction using service. So in case you want to pass the data between two components, you can do
Mm-hmm.
that using service. Better example, which we'll see is when we learn about RxJS. So right now, just be aware there are multiple techniques. So we have used input and output, view child, view children, view child, content child, and you also have some services as the another approach. So now we have to actually talk about, let's go into a little bit more detail into the services.
More services. Okay.
Yeah. So provided in,
Mm-hmm.
we have root, and you have two more. You have root ini, and there is one called platform, which is not used, which gets internally used by the router service. As of now, there is no like concrete example which is available for using provided in platform. In case there is something comes up, we will add a new video. But right now we have two provided in root and any. We are going to discuss about root right now, and any we will discuss once we go into routing, because there is a solid use case which we can use. Before actually we talk about this provided in root, we have to talk something about how this particular services gets resolved, right? So we said dependency injection. So once we inject this particular service, Angular has to actually resolve these dependencies. How we do that? How Angular does that? So to understand it, let's talk a little bit about this diagram, which is known as dependency resolution. Here, whenever you inject a service Angular needs to figure out where this particular service is provided. So right now, if you see, this provided in is something which is known as root. So what does it denotes? In older days, I mean, before Angular 6, yeah, before Angular 6, what we used to do is whenever we used to create a service, we used to register that service here. So you can see this providers array is empty. We actually used to do it here. Then with Angular 6, Angular team came up with a approach where they said when we create a service, we will say provided in root by default. So when we say provided in root, the service is actually registered here inside this app module. You don't have to do it manually now. Now, why it was done, which is of course again very really again which is really important to understand. So a lot of time, what we developers used to do is they used to register a service, and over the time of over the time, probably after some sprint, developers used to actually stop using that particular service. For example,
Hmm.
let's say I was doing some POC, the code made into master, and now I'm not using it after the next release because the POC is not needed anymore.
Hmm.
But as this is already available in providers, it is getting uh, bundled as part of your code, final code. So Angular said, once you create a service and say provide it in root, we will take care of registering your services here in app module. Also, in case this particular service is never getting used, we will also remove this from the bundle once you create a production build. Win-win situation for both of us, right? And as framework and as well as the developers. Now, what else? What else provided in root does? Once you add a service using provided in root, you get a single instance of this particular service available across. Remember this. So what do you mean by singleton? Let's try to figure that out. So what I'm going to do right now is here, let's we know constructor, right? So we talked about constructor multiple times. So what it is, I mean, this is something which will get called whenever a new instance of your class is getting created. So here, what I will do is we'll say console.log and I'll say room service initialized. Why I'm doing it, let's go ahead and figure out. So let's say I use this particular service somewhere else, for example, in employee component, and say this is private, uh, not employee, rooms service, and room service. So we injected this particular service here as well. Now let's go to our view and see what is happening here. So you can see room service is only room service initialized is getting called only once, not at other places. And it is from room service, this one. I mean, if you even see, I mean, if I click on toggle, you will not see, okay, this service is not initialized again. Why so? Because there is only one single instance of this particular class or this room service which is available right now. So there is only one instance. Whenever you use provided in root, so it means I'm registering this particular service into my root module. If it gets used, of course, it will be part of your bundle. If it doesn't get used, it will be removed. But you are also getting a single instance of your service.
Hmm.
Now, let's go back and try to see what in case I need a separate instance. Valid use case, right? I mean, I don't want to use the same instance for multiple components. I want what I want is, so employees should have its own employee should have its own instance. So we can actually pass something known as providers, and then you can pass a service here. So I'm passing room service again here. So now let's see what happens. And you can see rooms service is actually initialized twice. One, of course, the global instance. Second is for employee. So who is using global instance right now? Rooms. And who is using the local instance? Employee. So employee has a different instance and your rooms has a different instance. So this is how you can actually create instance of your
Right.
service in case you need to. Most of the time, I mean, singleton instance is more than enough, but there may be some use cases as per your application. For example, a real-time example which I can give is in one of the project I was part of, we wanted to actually take some JSON data and we wanted to put some controls on the UI. And remember, so every screen has that JSON data coming from the backend. So what we needed is every screen should have its own instance. So unfortunately, in during testing, we actually figured it out. It didn't made it to the production, but what we did is we removed this provider's property while migrating our code because our code base was on Angular 5 and we wanted to migrate to Angular 7, I think, where this provided in concept came in. So we ended up removing everything and then just added provided in. So what happened is now whenever I used to switch the URLs, I used to get more and more components being added onto my view. The reason being it was a single instance which was available. So whenever I used to switch back to another page, I mean all the JSON it used to get added into the same array because it was a single instance. So make sure that you are sure that you whether you want to create a single instance or not. So in case you don't want to create a single instance, go ahead and register your service inside that component and you're safe. So now we know about singleton instance and how you can make singleton instance. Now, one more thing, which is again I think important to understand during dependency injection. So how your services are getting resolved, right? So here, let's talk a little bit about it. So whenever a component or a service, right, it checks that okay, there is something which is injected here. The service resolution starts from this particular component. So it's okay, it identified, okay, now this room service is actually injected here. First, the component will check with itself. Do I have an providers array available here? If it is available, the entire dependency resolution tree stops. If it doesn't identify that, okay, this particular service is not available here. In case I have a new module, remember I can have a number of modules. We have not just done it as of now. We will be doing that while we move into routing. So let's say if for example, rooms has its own module, it will go to the parent. So it will be module in that case. It will check with that module. Do you have this particular service? It says, okay, I don't have it. And then it goes to the parent of the that particular module. So let's say right now we have component app component.html, which is our root component. It checks with this particular component. Do you have this particular instance? It says no. And at the end, it reaches to app module. And as all the services which you create are marked as provided in root, it comes here and it says, okay, I have found this particular service. What in case this particular service is not registered? I mean, we misprovided in root or uh, you never had this particular property. So there is possibility that you may not have this provided in property available in case someone migrated the code base. So what in this case? Now you'll get an error. So this error is again, you will find, of course, you will find a solution on Stack Overflow, probably on the first page. So whenever you get an error like something like this, which says no provider for room service. So here it is saying that I am not able to figure out where this particular service is registered. Remember, you may get this, of course, while working daily on your code base. It's possible.
Hmm.
So here it is, of course, saying that, okay, this particular service was not available at app module. So what I did is I went one step above. So let's see. Let's go back to the this diagram. So it actually went to this app module, our app module. It didn't found this particular service here. Then where else it can look up. So remember, above app module, we also have something called main.ts,
Hmm.
and we use something called platform browser here. So it goes to this platform browser and says, do you have this particular service by any chance? It says, no, I don't have it. After this, there is one more level which is called null injector, which is actually specifically to use or check if this particular service is available or not. And once it reaches there, you get this particular error, null injector error. Makes sense, right? Null injector and null injector error. So you get this particular error, says, okay, this particular service is not available. I'm not sure what you're trying to do, but it is not available. It is not registered. And let's go ahead and put it back. So I can go to room service and just put it back, and our application will compile again, and it works. So this is what this particular hierarchy means. So this is how your services gets resolved. So this now this is it from the dependency injection. We need to discuss one more thing before we end up with dependency injection, and then we will move on to our HTTP. So far, we have learned about dependency injection and how it is resolved. But there are a few more important things which you should understand, and which is known as resolution modifiers. So we are going to talk about 4 resolution modifiers which exist and which are really useful uh, based on your scenario. So we will also discuss about the scenarios where it can be utilized.
I think I'm gonna split this timeline here because I know this is a related topic, but I feel like these should be two separate sections, right? Like dependency injection, and then resolution modifiers. Yeah, something more like uh da, 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 da. Let's go here and that, and and go here. We'll say this, right? Like resolution modifiers. Oops, come here. Nope. Oh, there we go. Introduction. Yeah, resolution modifiers. Right, resolution modifiers. Introduction. Right. Oh, how did I get you here? Right, because then he goes in a local store. So yeah, so resolution modifiers. Wait, let's go. Angular. Yeah, let's go here. Resolution decorate parameter decorated to be used on constructor parameter, which tells the dependency injection framework to start dependency resolution from the local injector. Skip self parameter decorated to be used on constructor parameters, which tells the dependency injection framework to start dependency resolution from the parent injector. Dependency resolution from the parent injector. Resolution works upward through the injector hierarchy, so the local injector is not checked for a provider. So it tracks that it's putting it under dependency injection because it's part of the DI framework. Parameter decorated to be used on constructor parameters, which tells the DI framework to start dependency resolution. Dependency injection guide. Modify the provider's search with self and skip self. Providers can also be scoped. Providers can also be scoped by injector through the constructor parameters decorators. The following example overrides the browser's storage token and the component class providers with the session storage browser API, the same browser storage service. Twice the injector decorated with self, skip undo. which injector handles the provider dependency. Yeah. Wait. What did we click on before it brought us here? Da, 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 da. Qualify dependency lookup and parameter decorators. Dependency injection in action. Okay. This guide explores many of the features of dependency injection in Angular. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Modify the provider search with self and skip. Qualify dependency lookup with parameter decorators. So yeah, technically it's right. That should be right under dependency injection, but it seems like it should be like can I do this? Like I nudge you over. Is that even is that legit? I don't know. Can I do that? Oh my god. Okay. Will this let me? So kind of like that. That's right. Like a sub thing. I guess that's like technically right, but because I want to make a distinction between here's basic dependency injection and then here's the resolution modifiers, right? And actually, let's put that self and DI providers. Let's see. Let's go back here. Let's grab you. Self and skip self. Yeah, self and skip self, because you go into self, skip self, yeah, resolution modifiers right off the bat, right? Self and skip self. I'll say self, skip self, because the whole idea is that you can see this at a glance and go to each section to kind of get into it. Should that be down here? Let's see. Let's dive in here.
So let's start with the first resolution modifier, which is available called self. Let's see a use case for this self decorator. So we are back to this code, and here we will go to this employee component because I think this is the best place where the self decorator scenario is best suited for. So remember we discussed about how you can actually go ahead and add this provider's property on employee service because we want to have a separate instance for this particular service. And then we also discuss about the resolution, how your dependency gets resolved, right? I mean, it goes to your parent and it keeps going till it finds the root. And if it is not available at the root, it will go to the null injector, and then we will get an error called null injector error, right? So this providers does not exist, which is like, as I said, widely uh, widely searched error, which is available on internet. But yeah, let's go ahead and see how we can utilize the self decorator here. So in this scenario, in employee component, we are actually injecting the service at the component level, right? So we are sure that this particular service should be available here. That's the use case, and that's the expectation as well. So what we can do is we can, by using @self decorator, which should be imported from Angular core. Remember this. By using this, we can by using this self decorator, now we are saying that this particular service should be available at this level. If this particular service is not available here, it means we should throw an exception. Now, when it can be useful. So in my one of my real-time project where I was working, so we wanted to actually create the forms by collecting some JSON data which was coming from backend. So what happened is, by mistake, while migrating our application from the lower version to the upper version, so the lower version was actually Angular 5. and we were migrating to Angular 7, and the provider's property came around Angular 6. So what we did is by mistake we removed that property. And what happened? But as we removed this property, whenever we used to actually revisit different forms, all the controls used to get added into the same service because it was a singleton service. And at one point we realized that our form, one of the page or one of the form is really slow. And then we realized that okay, behind the scene it has like 300 controls. So that was the use case. But in case we added this, we might have added this self decorator. It actually serves the purpose because it should tell us that okay, now this particular service is should be available here, should be registered here. If I use this self decorator, let's run this application first. So we'll do ngserve -o. So the application is here, and let's click. And let's keep it side by side because we want to see the error. So let's say if I add the self decorator and I remove this provides property. So now what will happen is we will start getting the same error which we have received earlier, which says, let's come back here and okay, looks like this employee component is not available. That's why I'll just add this employee component somewhere. Let's add it here. And now we have this no provider for room service, right? So we started getting this error. Now, actually here, as we added self decorator, now during or while resolving this particular instance, Angular will not go up. It will just try to see if it is available here. If it is not available here, it directly goes to the null injector error and it raises an error that this particular service is not available. So pretty useful in case you are aware that, okay, your service will only be registered at this particular level. Go ahead and use it. Now let's move on to the next decorator which we have, which was skip self. For that, we will take an example of this rooms component service because if you see, we are not registering the service here, right? We are not saying, okay, this service should be available at the component level. We are expecting this service to be available somewhere up. I mean, maybe his parent, parent of room component, maybe app component or app module. So we are aware that, okay, this service will never exist at this level. So what we can do is we can ask the Angular to skip the check for this particular component by using skip self. That's the name, right? So name itself suggests skip self, skip myself from the entire dependency resolution tree which you are going to execute. Skip myself. Again, to give you an idea, should we use this? The answer is maybe, because Angular internally uses something known as Bloom filter to figure out where the service or the instance is available, and it is pretty fast already. You don't have to do go ahead and use skip self.
Bloom filter. Wait. You say bloom filter? Bloom filter? Add the search feature to your app. Complex animation sequences. Ooh, we need to get to that. Server-side rendering with Angular Universal. Oh, really? Okay. Upgrading from AngularJS to Angular. Use okay. Wait. Where is Where is Bloom? Oh man, I wanna. Okay. Anime. Oh, this. Yes. Yes. Oh yes. Courage stagger. Oh yes. We need to get into this. Okay. Okay. Ooh. Things I need to do. Okay. Let's copy that. Where'd I put it? Where'd I put it? Where'd I put it? Where did I put it? Where did I put it? There I put it. There I put it. Okay. You can't see this, can you? So let's put this over. Come here. Let's put this over. Should I put this over here? Put this over here. Yeah, wait. Put this over here first. Bring this over here. Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, let's see this. Okay, so let's put that there and coding related. Daddy wants to get into this. Yeah. Uh-huh. Complex animation. Okay, kitty cat. So there we go with that. Now, bloom filter. What did he say? Bloom filter? Hang on. Angular bloom filter or blue filter? No, the ivy. Okay. What is the advantages to using bloom filters? Are the best way to do something because I can use our angular bloom filter. Hang on, bloom filter. Which angular package are the source of the bloom filter? I've just looked through source for my interest and found a place that looks. I'm talking about the last line of bloom add function. Bloom add. As I understood, TV has several filters for different injectors. In this case, blah 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 blah. It's been an issue. Blah 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 blah. Bloom add, bloom add. Okay, that sounds like something that could take me to where I want to go back, go back. Bloom add. Uh, oh, come on, man. Did he say bloom filter? Wait, a blue filter. Can I?
But it is this is again I the check for this particular component by using skip self. That's the name, right? So name itself suggests skip self, skip myself from the entire dependency resolution tree which you are going to execute. Skip myself again to give you an idea. Should we use this? The answer is maybe,
Maybe.
because Angular internally uses something known as Bloom filter to figure out where these
Bloom filter. Okay, what the frack? Uh, I wanna know where that is in its internals. Something called bloom filter. Complex animation, blah 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 blah. I don't see that. Actually, it's testing using APIs, observables compared to other techniques, deprecated APIs and features. Hmm. Blah 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 blah. Deprecated feature that can be removed in 11 or later. Deprecated feature that can be removed in 12 or later. Async. Deprecated feature that can be removed in 14 or later. Form builder. 15 or later. 16 or later. Yes, all of that. Deprecations. 17 or later. 18 or later. Fine. Uh, API reference here, maybe glossary. Uh, oh my god. Okay, what the heck, man? Angular. Hmm. How Angular builds Bloom filter for node injection and when we can catch false positive values. Bloom filters. A Bloom filter is a space-efficient probabilistic data structure that is used to test whether an element is a member of a set. Okay. Bing. This seems Angular in depth is moving away from Medium. More recent articles are hosted on the new platform in depth via our own website. Thanks for being part of the in-depth movement. Okay. Bing. In this article, we're going to examine a new Angular node injector, which heavily uses a Bloom filter to retrieve a token. Take a look at how the node injector looks like. How the node injector looks like. Okay, what the node injector looks like. How Angular builds Bloom filter for node injector and when we can catch false positive values. What's the resolution algorithm for resolving dependencies in node injector? Intro. It's one of the two new types. Another one is R3 injector of Angular injectors introduced by the Ivy renderer. We will be switched to them. Oh, good grief. We will be switching to them as soon as Ivy renderer has landed. View engine Ivy node injector to Ivy. Okay, same. It's injector. That's URL. I'm sorry. What is injector? And just that it's the same thing, right? It's the same little structure. Okay. The node injector is going to replace the current element injector and the picture above and reduce memory pressure in an Angular application by using Bloom filter. Bloom filter? Let's take a look at a simple application I'll use along the way. Yada, 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 yada. The app is pretty simple. We have a root app component that contains two nested div elements. Also, there are two directives. Blah, 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 blah. View as a template representation. LView, TView data. Also, Angular Ivy renderer stores the injection information for the node in view data. In other words, it allocates slots in those LView. Blah, blah, blah. Here's a visualization of what it looks like. Cumulative bloom, template bloom. Okay. There are a few takeaways from the picture. The LView and TView data arrays can contain lots of bloom filters, 8 slots long. Their number is directly proportional to the number of nodes for which the injector is created. Each bloom filter has a pointer to the parent bloom filter and the packed parent location. By packed, slot log contains not only a parent injector but can also contain view offsets, shift, packaging, unpacking. It's common a bit what's up everyone. Angular stores all tokens in TView data, and this is an LView so that we can retrieve all providers looking at the view. Let's go back and see how many views we have. Cumulative and template bloom filters. If you are not familiar with bloom filters, you might be interested in this great article, Probabilistic Data Structures. Probabilistic data structures. That's funky. Bloom filter. And bloom filters by example. Aha. In Angular Ivy, we have a quite interesting implementation of bloom filter. Template bloom filter is a filter that keeps information about the current node's token, which can be viewed in TView. Let's see how it is built. For example, I will say the bloom filter is a bit vector. is a bit vector. So what's a bit vector angular bloom filters? Ivy defines bloom size equal to 256 so that we have a vector in 256, which are divided into 8 parts. Boom, boom. How Angular hashes elements in that filter. First, Angular generates, if it is not defined yet, a unique ID for the token via implementing integer value and puts it to static element ID property. Note our app component got 0 ID since the token generation starts with 0 and app component is the first directive Angular as an injection system. Then it takes that number and fits it into bloom size through bitwise and operators so that the result is always between 0 and 255. You got it. Blah, blah, blah. It's like a remainder operator so that all the unique IDs are moduloed into a number between 0 and 255. Bloom bit ID plus bloom mask. Dot, 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 dot. Finally, Ivy creates a mask using that bloom bit and sets that mask in one of 8 buckets depending on bloom bit. 8 buckets depending on, use the raw bloom bit number to determine which bloom bit one should check. Dot 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 la la for all possibility. This is groovy. Holy cow. We're just going in. Okay, what is the node injector? Is an injector which belongs to a node. Okay. Source code Angular blob. Okay, the source code. Okay. Okay. Node injector resolution algorithm. Oh, nice. Okay. 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 Whew. Summary. The more directives and services on those directives we have, the more false positive values we can get. This is good. I need to get a medium. Just yeah. That's great. Angular in depth. Angular in depth. Yeah, buddy. Holy cow. Yep. Latest on Angular in depth. Useful Chrome dev to take into destroy and part data as components. Okay, this is interesting. Right. All right, let's go back to the first page. We are going to keep you. So we're going to put you over here. And let's see, we're going to put you in. Oh, we're going to put you in Angular. There we go. Bookmark saved. All right, groovy. Yeah, this was neat. This was neat. All right. A little side quest there. I just really needed to understand what the heck he was talking about with bloom filter. Okay. Let me turn that off and let's keep going.
Service or the instance is available, and it is pretty fast already. You don't have to do go ahead and use skip self, but it is useful with another attribute or another resolution modifier called optional. So let's go ahead and see now the next attribute which is available. We will see optional first, and then we will go to the host. To understand the optional one, what I have done is I have created a service called logger. So this is logger service, and it contains a method called log. And you can see what I have is I'll just add this provided in property here because I have removed it right now. So I have added this, created this new service, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this logger service. But what we need is we want to use this logger service only during dev environment. During production, actually, we don't want to use this logger service. But as we have seen, if we try to remove this provided in property, we will get an exception because we are saying if this particular service is not registered anywhere, go ahead and raise an error. Even though we use skip self or we use self, we are going to get this error. So this is what we can achieve using optional decorator. So let's go to app component.ts. We will actually inject this particular service here. So let's say private logger service, which is type of logger service, and let's uncomment this. So I'm going to call this log method, and let's see. And we have this app component.ng on it, right? So this is something which is logged at this line. Angular, you can see logger service.ts. But during production, let's say we don't want to inject this service. I mean, there are multiple ways. We will not talk about it right now. But in case, just to recreate the scenario where this particular service is not registered, what we can do is, let me just add optional later on, but we can actually go ahead and recreate this scenario where this service is not registered by removing this provided in root property. Right now, we will start getting an exception saying this service is not available, right? And no provider for log service. This was expected. So
The
what we can do
injector,
is we can
the
mark this
inject,
service as optional. So let's go ahead and use optional decorator, not option, optional decorator. And now let's go ahead and see. And the error is gone. So we don't have that no provider for logger service anymore because this is optional. So in case Angular figures out there is an instance which is available, it's okay. If it doesn't, just go ahead and execute it. I'm using this ternary operator here because in case this particular service is not available, we will get an error. So let's see. Uh, so if I try to execute the log method, there, you can see cannot read properties of null. So to avoid this, I'm using this ternary operator, which will only execute in case logger service exists. Otherwise, it will just skip that. So this is optional. Now what we will do is we will go ahead and see the last decorator, which is available called roast. And for that, what we are going to do is we are going to take this container example, right? So what we have here is we have injected this room service here in my container. Now, how host is useful? Let's talk about that. So here, how many instances of room service which we have? Let's go ahead and see that. So we have one and two instances right now. What in case I want to have an separate instance for all the component which are part of container, like this container component. In that case, what I can do is I can just register this particular service here first step, and then I can add the host decorator here. Now all the component which is actually loaded inside this particular container will start using the instance which is available here. So to just recreate the scenario, we have employee and rooms, right? So what I can do is here remove this, and from here remove this because it was creating this second instance. If you understand, if you remember, right? And let's go ahead and see now. Okay, one more thing which we missed is this container, right? So we have to uncomment because we are not right now using containers. So I'll just do this. I'll comment this employee and then I will just use the container. And let's go ahead and see. So now you have two instances. So one instance is actually, which is of course global one, and another one is actually which is created by the container component. Now the everything within container will start using the second instance, which is created by container. Also, we are saying this is host component. So at no, actually none of the component which is loaded inside container will go above this particular level to look for this particular service instance. So if I remove this, and try to run, you will start getting this no provider for room service found in node injector. It will not go up. It will never go up and check with its parent. So this is what you can achieve using the host decorator. Remember, most of the decorators you are not going to use daily. Probably few use cases where it may be useful. Skip self, I have, as I said, it's not mandatory, but you can use it. It's as a bloom filter is already pretty fast, and
Hmm.
you don't have to use it. Self is really useful. Do use it in case you are using providers on the component itself. Not to actually avoid that, because bloom filters is already pretty powerful, but just to avoid the scenario which I mentioned, right? So sometime by mistake while refactoring the code, we remove it. If you have added self, it means, okay, I actually really wanted to have this component, this service registered at this component level. And in case someone new comes in and joins your team and he figures out, okay, this providers is probably not useful, and removes it, he'll start getting an error, and probably he can read about self decorator and what it is. Of course, documentation is a better way, but just in case nothing is documented, right? So this is all about the resolution modifiers, and let's move on. In this video, we are going to talk about another type of service. So as you can see, there are actually three types of services which exist. So we have used the first type, which is class-based providers. So till now, whenever we used to do NGG service, we used to get a class with, of course, @injectable decorator, and we used to inject it and then use it. Let's go ahead and see where value providers can be useful. Value providers are like you can pass an object as a service, and you might be wondering where that can be useful. Why should I use object as a service? So let's go ahead and figure that out first. First, let's see the use case, and then we will create our service. So far, let's go back to our room service. This is the code we have. We have an constructor, and let me just remove this line. And we have a get rooms method, because this service does not do anything. I mean, this is an kind of, sorry. So this is like a static service, right? I mean, with mock data and does nothing, right? So we have just some dummy data which is available, and then we are getting this data. But once you create a real-time application, your data is going to come from, of course, an API. And for an API, you need an endpoint. That's how APIs work, right? So what in that case? Let's see an example. In case I have to access an API endpoint, which will be used across my application, I mean, in multiple services, what can I do? The first way, let me show you the simpler way, which can be done. I can go to environment. I have already added this endpoints here. So what I have done is in environment.ts, I have added a property called API endpoint, which is of course right now targets to localhost 8080 and some API slash v1. So v1 version 1 of our API. This API does not exist. And I have to add the same configuration in production, so my build will not fail, otherwise it will fail. So remember, in case you have multiple environment files, whenever you change into your environment.ts, make sure you make the same change into every environment.ts file which is available. For example, I can have one for staging, I can have one for UAT, and of course two are required, which is environment.ts and prod. We will discuss about we'll discuss this later on while deploying our production application, how we can change these settings.
I'm hoping, and I haven't seen this part yet because this is getting close to right where I stopped before. But I'm hoping he gets into uh this npm. Yes. Yeah. Okay. NV. Hope he gets into this. So because this.env is this is what we'd be using, right? .env. You put your, you know, your variables inside of a .env file, and then you point everything to a variable. You would not. So your code does not know specifically the endpoint like that, right? This would be a variable instead, which would be pointing to a singular .env file. Um, so then you wouldn't have to change these things backwards and forwards all throughout your code. Just go to that one file and change those things to have, a set of variables for when you're in development mode versus production, right? And then those values would change automatically, because that's how .env works. Anyway, and then when you on your deployment platform, right, you put those environment variables inside of that platform. But I suspect we'll probably get into that later on. But let's see. I just thought I'd mention that now.
But right now, just remember, so whenever you add something, just make sure that it is added to all the environment files. And in case I want to access this API endpoint inside my service, how I can do that? Let's go to room service.ts, and I can import from dot//// until I reach to environment. And then I can say environment dot the environment file, and then I can just access the property, right? So environment, and then I can use this environment anywhere. So I can just say here console.log environment dot API endpoint, and let's save this and see. And you have this URL available, right? So here you can see room service line number 44, and we have this API endpoint which is available in our config file. But what we are talking about here is we are saying this URL will be used at multiple services. What in that case? Just think about your import, right? I mean, it will be like everywhere I have to give entire path. How I can avoid this? So this is where the value providers comes really handy. We are going to see two examples. So first, let's see how we can actually deal with these objects, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder. I'll call this as app config. So it will contain some services related to application configuration. So the first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to create a service. So let's see how we create a value provider, right? I'm going to call it as a service because we are going to actually inject it. So I'll call it as app config dot service dot ts. If you're wondering why I'm typing it, because of course there is no command for it, you have to do it manually. So the first thing which we are going to do is we are going to create export constant, and I'll call it as app service. It depends. I mean, if you see, I'm using capital letters, but it's okay. Even though you don't use capital letters, that's absolutely fine because generally we have an habit of mentioning const as capitals, but it's not mandatory. So choose whatever you are comfortable with. And then what I have to do is I have to create a new injection token. So I'll say new injection token, and you can see I'm using something known as GitHub Copilot. That's why I'm getting this autocomplete. So I'm going to use it, and let's import injection token from Angular core. And then this is app config, right? This is actually an interface we are going to create. So let's go ahead and create that. I'll create an interface. Mm, Let's call it as app config.interface.ts. And let's create an interface. And you can mention all the properties which belongs to your app configuration. I mean, so right now what we are going to do is I'm going to use API endpoint. This is the only property we have, but in case you have more, just go ahead and add all the properties here. Now, here I can just use the same interface which we have created, and let's import it. So this becomes my service. This is the service we are going to use, but we also need the data. So by value providers means I'm going to provide some value. Let's go ahead and create our value. So I'm going to create another constant, and I'm going to call it as app config, and let's provide the value. So I can say API endpoint because this is the property we have here, and then we have to provide the value. Now what we can do is we can import our environment.ts file here, and slash dot slash environment slash environment, and take the property which we need. So we are going to need environment dot API endpoint. And now I have to do it at only one place. I don't have to repeat this inside each and every service. So we don't have to do that. So now this is done. So we have our service ready. We have we have our service ready. We have our value ready. Now let's see how to register this particular service, because we have not done this, right? I mean, we don't have anything called here called provided in. So let's see how to do it. So we can go to app module, and you know you can see this providers here. This is where you can register your service. So you can say provide. Sorry, it will be an object. So I can say provide, and here I'm going to say provide this particular service, and I'm going to use a property called use value, and inside value I'm going to say this is the value, and let's import both. So I'll just done. So we have, what we have done so far is we have created a value provider. We have registered that value provider. Now the next step is to use this provider. Let's do that. I'm going to go back to room service.ts, remove this, and now we need to access the URL from that particular service which we have created. So we know how to inject a service. So let's try that. Constructor is here, and our service name is app service config. So if I do this, and you can see I cannot, right? Even my IntelliSense says it is not something which can be recognized. What is this? So the
Hmm.
way to use the value providers is you have to use something known as inject decorator, and then you will pass your service here, app service config. So let's import. Now you can see it is giving me the path somehow. Let's change this. It should not be src. Uh, hmm.
Hmm.
So we have
Hmm.
our app service. We have to use @inject decorator, and now I can say private. So I'll call it as config, and here we don't have to use type any because we also know the type. So let's go back to the service. This is the type, app config. So we can use this particular type here. So we get proper intelligence, right? I mean,
Hmm.
even the typings. And again, this is, now let's try to access the same API.
All right, so I just want to point out one little thing. Um, this supercalifragilisticexpialidocious size line, um, I made mine like this. So let's transition that over. Tiny URL, right? So there you go. So if you want to code long in this, grab that instead. A lot less painful. Yeah. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that. Okay, so we're almost caught up. Let's keep going.
API endpoint by using this particular service. So let's save this, go back to the code base, and sorry, go back to the URL, and let's see if it is compiled. It is compiled. So let's see. And we have room service initialized here, and this is the your endpoint. So you can see line number 46. Now we are actually getting this value from a value provider rather than actually directly accessing environment dot a value from environment.ts. What we are doing is we have created an uh, injection token, or we have created a value provider and then we are using it. So this is the way you should be doing that. Now let's talk about the second use case. So if you have while learning JavaScript, you might have seen some APIs, right? I mean, you may have seen Windows, we have local storage, session storage. What in case I want to use those inside Angular? Of course you can, because of course that's JavaScript, and Angular at the end gives you JavaScript as an output, right? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
front end, and every JavaScript code is a valid TypeScript code, so you can use that. But there are some ways. So there is a way to use it. So to do that, I'll take an example where we will use the local storage service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see an example where we are going to use local storage service as an value provider inside Angular app. So to do that, we'll create a new file and we will call it as local storage dot token. Remember, any JavaScript API which you have seen can be used in this way. And I'll just copy some code. So here, what we are doing is, of course, we are creating an injection token. We are using provided in root here because I want to make sure that this particular service is tree shakeable. And if no one is using it, the code can be removed it. And I'm calling a factory function to return a new instance of local storage. That's what we are doing here. We don't have to register this service directly anywhere. So let's see how we can use it. So I'll go to app component.ts, and here let's see, we will inject, sorry, we'll import from dot slash, okay, dot slash local storage token. And now we can use this into our constructor. So we need to use inject, right? And then we'll call local storage token, which is type of local storage, and you can also give type storage. So this is this is actually the type for your, let's see, yeah, this type for your storage API, which exists in browser. So actually, TypeScript already has type definition file for most of the web APIs or JavaScript based APIs which we use generally. It's called a file called lib.dom.ts because it's all related to DOM, right? So here we can use it in case you get any error while compiling, just move it to any. That's absolutely fine. And once this is done, let's go ahead and add something to local storage. So to do that, I'll just add one value. So let's add on ng on init, let's add this value into our local storage. So I'm adding a variable called name and the value is Hilton Hotel. Let's see. This value will be added once our app is loaded, right? Because it's on ng on init on our root component. Let's go ahead and see. So this is where you can verify local storage. So here you can go to your application and just see local storage, localhost 4200, right? So because our application is right now running on localhost 4200, you can see this value, name Hilton Hotel. Yep. So this is where your value will be available. Don't try to add anything which is secure to your local storage. This is just an example how you can use local storage. In similar way, you can also use session storage. So in case you want to use session storage inside your Angular application, rather than directly using it, try to create an injection token like this, which like the one which we have created for local storage. The only difference would be session storage, right? And Even you can use other APIs, for example, window dot, for example, in case you want to use location, right? So rather than actually injecting location directly, which is or accessing location directly, which is possible. Yes, of course, it is possible. Try to use a token. So you can use location, menu bar, there are navigator, there are a lot of APIs which exist, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you can use all those APIs as a token here rather than actually directly using inside your code base. In
Hmm.
case you come across any existing code base which is not following this, try to refactor. I mean, you will learn something new. So this is
Hmm.
it
Nice.
from value providers. In this video, we are going to talk about Angular HTTP and observables. This is really important to understand because in your enterprise applications, what you are going to do is most of the time you will be interacting with the APIs. So this is what we are going to learn here, how to interact with your APIs, how to handle the HTTP calls, and how to do different HTTP calls.
Finally, juicy. Yes. Juiciness. Yes. Okay, let's scroll back a minute. Yeah, so I can get that introduction on the next video. There we go. Okay. All right. So now we are caught up finally. Woohoo! Yes. And we are now ready to get into some fun stuff. Okay. So that's it for this video. Next up, as you have already seen, we'll get into observables. Awesome sauce. Let me switch over. So until the next video, take care of yourselves, practice, 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 and always be coding. uh, Uncle Fonzo out with this video. Next up, observables. Woo-hoo.